Hello, everyone. Welcome to Facebook Live with the Horticulturists. We are the Horticulturists here to answer your gardening questions. My name is Candice Hart. I'm the Illinois State Master Gardener Specialist, and I'm located here in central Illinois, living over in Bloomington. And I've got two other great horticulturists here today.
Hi, my name is Kelly Allsup, and I'm a horticulture educator, and I'm based in Bloomington, and I love talking about insects and vegetables.
And I'm Ryan Pankau, horticulture educator right here in Champaign-Urbana. And my favorite thing is our trees and shrubs and all the woody vegetation. So that's
Awesome.
what I like to talk about.
Cool. And my thing is flowers, which you'll see here in a second. We're going to do a flower demo. But we're going to kick it off today. If you have questions, start to put those in the comment box. We're going to answer, hopefully get through all of those today. And we've got a couple other kind of things we want to talk about first, stuff that's going on in our gardens or that we're seeing. So Kelly, you want to kick us off? You brought a little friend with you today.
Yes, I brought a caterpillar, and this is a black swallowtail caterpillar. And what it does is it eats plants in the carrot family, dill, parsley, or fennel, and then its defense system is a yellow forked gland called an ostium, and it actually smells. And so all you have to do, and this is a great activity to do with kids, is look at your parsley and poke him. Sometimes you got to poke him a couple of times.
Is it working?
Okay.
He won't do
Okay,
it.
buddy.
Come on.
I'm going to eat
You
you.
can do it. Defend yourself. Oh.
Well, we'll poke him again later on in the broadcast. But it actually smells, and it's kind of funny, and it's a cool plant. And this is the black swallowtail, and you see those guys everywhere. They are black and kind of iridescent blue, and they kind of lazily go from flower to flower. So I love the black swallowtails.
So if people see those like on their herbs, what should they just leave them? Let them
Yes,
be?
yes,
Let them go.
because parsley isn't that good anyway.
It doesn't taste that good. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, that's what I meant. But they love it. So do that. So I've been seeing a lot of butterflies in the garden lately. And I have a few pictures of some monarchs. So one of the things that I always say to butterflies when I see them, and I'll always be like, hold still. Wait, let me identify you. And so...
Does that work?
No, it doesn't. So I have a really cool picture of a monarch made out of Legos.
I saw that.
It's still.
Oh, nice.
And so the monarchs this year, they're loving those Mexican sunflowers, which if you've ever grown them, they're really high and tall, but you will have tons of butterflies on this Mexican sunflower. We know that monarch larvae eat milkweed, and so lately I've been looking at the different caterpillars and the monarch eggs for the I Pollinate project. So that's been kind of cool. And then we have beautiful pictures of the black swallowtail. Again, it has that characteristic orange spot that is surrounded by blue. The females have more blue spots than, and the males have more yellow, which is another problem with butterfly identification, is because sometimes the males and the females don't look alike, and they're completely different than each other. So, which makes identification somewhat even worse. So, then the next butterfly that I've been seeing a ton of is Silvery Checkerspot. And it's smaller than the monarch butterfly. And it has just this a range of orange and black lines and spots and little chevrons. It's really pretty. And what it does is it eats your purple coneflower. And it congregates. It eats all of them, a lot of them at the same time. And then it overwinters in your landscape and comes back out and feeds. So if you have purple coneflower, in your garden. Are you going to clean up the garden? No. You're going to leave it alone.
Yeah.
And then I just have a couple of other two butterflies I wanted to highlight. I have the great spangled fritillary. And the reason I want to highlight this is because I leave some weeds in my garden. And violets are one of them, because that is the caterpillar the larva source for great spangled fritillary. And then I have the common buckeye, which has these beautiful beautiful eye spots, a brown butterfly. And I leave plantain in the garden.
You just leave all the weeds, don't you?
To let those caterpillars have those. Well, when you're gardening and you're weeding, if you don't put something in the garden, then you get more weeds. So I've decided that violets and plantains are going to survive in my garden.
There you go.
So, and I've been seeing lots of butterfly action lately. So, and I promise this guy will stop being camera shy and we'll see.
Let him rest.
Yeah, we can show you the poop.
He's got plenty of that, right?
I mean, cool. That's one thing that right there, when you see all that poop on your plants, it's a great way to know that you have a caterpillar going. And that's what Candice and we always look for the poop.
Yeah. What's the technical term for insect poop?
Frass.
Frass. If you want to be technical, call it frass.
So they eat a lot and they produce a lot of frass.
Exactly.
They produce a lot of frass. And that's how you know you have a caterpillar, other than, the eating
Stuff
leaves.
is gone.
Yeah, right. Cool. Well, thank you, Kelly. Sounds like you have a lot of butterflies going on.
Yeah. And if you are very interested in butterflies, there is a Butterflies of Illinois field guide that came out in the last 3 years through the Illinois Natural History Survey. I absolutely love this book. I use it all the time to try to identify butterflies because, it can be difficult. So, and fun and lots of information. So
awesome. Cool. Well, we got some questions coming in here. Keep those coming into the comment box. If you have any kind of gardening questions, we'll definitely get to those today. But what I brought with me today was a whole bunch of flowers. So I mentioned kind of flowers are my thing. I don't grow many vegetables like these guys do in their garden. I grow a lot of different cut flowers. So I harvested a bunch of stuff for my garden beds, which we've got a picture of that we can show you. I grow most of mine in raised beds so that it's a lot easier to weed. So a lot of people grow vegetables in their raised beds. I just fill mine all with flowers, and it's easier to harvest because things are elevated and there's not as many weeds to deal with. So I harvested a bunch of stuff this morning to bring along, and I just wanted to show everybody how to just make a simple bouquet. You don't have to be fancy with kind of stuff you harvest from the garden. You can just kind of gather things up and turn them into a quick little bouquet. So the first thing I did with all of this stuff that I harvested is obviously I cut the stems from the garden this morning. And before I go to make a bouquet, I clean off the stems. So I've got bare stems here. I've kind of removed most of the leaves because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make kind of a little hand-tied bouquet. And anything that goes in water, so like any stems that are going to eventually go in a vase, you want them to be nice and clean. Because if you have leaves in there, if you have anything on the stems, that's going to cause bacteria to grow, and then that's what's going to make your flowers go down pretty quickly, right?
And you cut them in the morning because the sugars are the highest.
Exactly. Yeah, morning's your best time, and it's cooler too, so it's easier to do. But yeah, so they've got plenty of sugar stored up in there. They're full of water, so it's a good time to do it. The other thing to think about too is flower food. So you can get this from any florist, and any flowers you buy pretty much anywhere typically include one of these. And this goes into the water. So you dump it into your vase, and that's going to give you some sugars for the flowers, also some acidifier and some bactericide. So it keeps those flowers lasting longer. So with that, let me just start to kind of gather some stuff up here. So what I do most of the time, if I'm just going to make arrangement for a vase, you can either do it in the vase. Some people will like to do that. They'll just start to arrange their stems inside the water. Or for me, what's sometimes easier is just to do it in your hand, like do a little bouquet, and then drop it into the vase. Would you agree, Kelly? Do you
yes,
tend
that's how I do it.
It's a little bit faster. So like I said, I kind of prepped all those stems, kind of cleaned off some of those leaves. And I'm right-handed, so I tend to hold it in my left hand, but you can do kind of whatever is most comfortable for you. But basically what I'm doing is I'm just starting to kind of gather those stems together, holding them all in kind of one spot with my hand. So you can kind of repeat certain colors a couple times, and then eventually it starts to get bigger, so you kind of have to hold them in between your thumb and your forefinger a little bit easier, adding things as you go.
Now, I love that yellow yarrow.
Yeah, we were walking in and Kelly's like, I need to get some cuttings of that.
And she's using the purple cone flowers,
yarrow.
and those little round balls are gumfrina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are really good because they'll dry really well. So if you wanted to make like a wreath or something that you need to kind of last for a long time, those are really great. I love adding in hydrangeas of any kind. These are some small little panicle hydrangeas that I pulled out of the garden.
And she's just kind of putting them all the whites, so all the whites not on one side, putting it throughout the whole bouquet.
Yeah, so you're kind of evenly spacing your colors a little bit. And this is totally kind of personal preference to what you like in terms of the look of it, and in terms of what kind of colors you want to do.
So she has the two orange, so she added that orange is that amaranthus?
Yep, amaranthus, which is a really great one. Easy to start from seed. Okay, so you can see I'm all still holding those in one little spot, and all my stems are nice and clean of leaves, and you can kind of pull them off as you're going too. But I'm just kind of in a circle, just kind of keep adding and adding until you get to kind of the size you want, or until you run out of flowers, and then you've used up,
and then,
used
then
up
you're
what
good.
you got. I've got some zinnias here, which is a great cut flower you can grow in your garden. Those are really easy to grow from seed.
I really like this method, but if I don't use this method, one of the things I would do is like I put the yarrow down first, and it would be like my holding the rest. Like, so I put the flower in that would hold everything else.
Yeah, and that's what hydrangea are good sometimes for too. You can start with like a big massive hydrangea, and then just kind of feed your other flowers through it, so it almost kind of holds everything together for you.
Oh, I love it.
So I've got some celosia I'm adding in. That's another great annual you can put in there. Dahlias, my dahlias are just starting to come up, so I can add a couple of dahlias in there. This one's kind of big.
You need it right here.
Where? Oh, over here. See, that's the other thing too. So you can kind of switch sides, turn it in your hand, and have a friend tell you what do you need. Or a mirror is actually really helpful when you're doing stuff like this too. You can look in a mirror and see how it's looking.
But even though we say, typically you try to replicate the different shapes and sizes and colors, but I kind of don't care about rules sometimes.
Honestly, yeah, when you're doing it just for like
it's
your
pretty,
kitchen, you just kind of do what looks good or what feels good to you. So once you kind of have the size you want, or like I said, you kind of run out of flowers, then you can start adding in like textural stuff like grasses. This is northern sea oats, which is a really cool.
It's a native
grass. It is a native, yeah. And then you can always add some greenery too. So I did some 9-bark, which is an awesome shrub you can grow in your landscape, and then you can just kind of finish it off with some of that greenery.
Kind of like a collar.
Yeah, you're kind of creating a frame for your picture of the flowers. So just kind of add those around the outside. Okay, so then what you can do is you could tie this off. So you could use a rubber band or ribbon, something to tie it off, and you could give this to somebody as a little gift. Like, here you go, here's a bouquet, or you could go get married and hold it like that. Or in this case, what I'm going to do is just cut the stem shorter, because I'm just going to drop it into a vase then. So I'm just going to cut these to kind of fit the size of my vase. Probably still a little bit long. Clean off those leaves again, because I don't want any in the water. Perfect. And then it got a little big for my vase, but it'll get in there.
Fits
and then
perfect.
Just drop it in.
Gorgeous.
And there you go. Then
Yeah,
you can
that
kind
is
of
beautiful.
judge it and pull things out and do all that. But yeah, that I think is kind of the simplest way to do it. It's just kind of hold it in your hands, get a nice bouquet going, and then just drop it into a nice vase.
And then so now the next week, what are you gonna do to take care of it?
So your key to keeping this lasting long is going to be your water. So you added the flower food, so that's good. But you still want to go ahead and change out that water every couple days. Put fresh water in, rinse out the vase, make sure it's nice and clean, and then keep it in a cool spot away from sun. So in the
I
middle of the
even
kitchen.
recut the stems every
And
time.
recut, yes, exactly. That too. That's going to get you a good, get you in the picture there. Yeah, good points. Yeah.
I love keeping them, and then if like one or two die, I pull them out, but the arrangement stays.
Yeah, you can just kind of pull as stuff fades. You can kind of pull things out, and like I said, a lot of it'll dry too. So a lot of it will stay even looking good without having to do much of anything. So have some fun with it. Go out into your garden, see what you have.
Gorgeous.
Make yourself a little bouquet and just have fun. Enjoy it.
I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, let's see what you guys want to see what we have for questions coming in here. So if you guys have any gardening questions, type them into that comment box, and we're going to get to them today. We've got a question here from Rhea. She says, "Help! I have slugs that eat up my marigolds, petunias, begonias. How can I get rid of them? They don't like her Dusty Miller. That's good, but they're eating the other stuff. So what do you guys say for slugs?"
Well, take away some moisture.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things they really like.
Slugs like a lot of moisture, and they tend to like dark places. You tend to find them kind of on the soil where it's nice and dark and moist and under the mulch.
Shaded.
Things. Yep, shaded, yeah. So a lot of people ask this about hostas because slugs love hostas. So a lot of times what I'll tell them is pull back the mulch. Like if you have mulch around those plants, pull back the mulch a little bit because that's a great place for slugs to hide. How about control? You can use baits. You can purchase baits for slugs.
So with the mulch, you're just kind of making it not so cozy right up next to the stem.
Yeah,
for
pull them
them.
back a
Yeah.
little bit from the plant itself. Yeah.
And I always say, like, thin the plants out a little bit because that might increase the airflow and dry it out.
That's true, yeah.
Because, hostas, they grow.
So close together,
Yeah.
so
Pretty
dense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my first initial question was, why does she think it's slugs? Because
That I wondered that too. 'Cause
usually marigolds go in full sun and not, even though they'll do some part shade.
Yeah.
So maybe they need to be put in a more a sunnier location.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you haven't actually seen the slugs, it might actually be something else causing the holes too. But if you've seen the slugs, then that's certainly a confirmation.
And then this leads to one of those, garden myths. This is our job. This is job security, is telling people that, no, you do not put nails in the bottom of your tomato plants for extra added iron. It would probably take 40 years for it to happen.
Take
but,
a lot of time.
a lot of people talk about, the tuna cans with the beer. That's a great way to know you have it, but that's not going to control slugs. You would definitely have to use the bait. Another thing that I really like using is diatomaceous earth. And so what it does is they're diatoms from the sea. Please don't ask me to describe that any further.
It's like coral, basically,
Yeah.
right? Kind of like crushed up coral.
Yeah.
The way I've heard it described, I don't know if that's accurate or not. But.
And what it does is you sprinkle it around the plant or on the plant, and what it does is it nicks the insect, and the insect then dries out. Not that snails are insects, but or slugs. Sorry,
Slugs, yeah. Either one.
but
it
would not be happy with crawling over that diatomaceous earth. So,
Yeah.
and I've had some really great success with that. So.
I've heard that one too, or I've heard some people, they'll put it almost in a ring around a planting or a specific area. Then you can kind of ensure, like, if they're going to cross that barrier, they're going to get pretty cut up.
Yep.
Which, it works, yeah.
It does work.
Good question.
And just diatomaceous earth, even though it is a biological pesticide, you still need to be safe.
Certainly.
And use gloves and don't inhale it. And
Yes.
Yeah,
don't let your
certainly.
dogs play in it.
Certainly. Excellent. Okay, keep those questions coming. We've got a question from Tiffany. She said they're wanting to plant hydrangeas in front of their foundation between the sidewalk on the west side of their house. There's no trees now, but they're looking to plant some type of birch or maple tree. What can we get away with? Panicled hydrangea, mountain, smooth, and also a secondary question, are the roots invasive for the foundation? So it's a west side.
Don't plant a maple. Plant a birch.
Yeah.
There are already too many maples.
Diversify, right?
Yeah.
Diversify, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so you're on the west side, so you're getting quite a bit of sun. So honestly, most of those hydrangeas would do pretty well. Personally, I would go with a panicle. That would be my choice. So like these, the ones I was using the arrangement early are a panicled hydrangea, so they kind of have this cone-shaped head to it. These are a lot tougher to me. I think they're a lot of more of a tougher hydrangea. They flower consistently. Like even if we have a hard winter, you still typically get a flower on it. So that's what I would go with, is either a panicle hydrangea or maybe even one of like the Annabelles, Incredibles, like one of those bigger hydrangeas.
I still think those have the lace caps or the big. Those actually need a little bit more water and full sun.
Yeah.
So if you're a waterer, which, I'm willing to water for my flowers, then you're fine. But in drought, I think the panicled and the oak leaf is going to...
I think so too. Yeah, and oak leaf's another good one. It should be okay on the west side. It'll take a little bit more shade and some sun too. So that's another one that I like to do quite a bit too.
Yeah, that's a favorite of mine. Really good fall color.
Yeah.
That's a added aspect of that.
Yeah.
But definitely agree the snowball hydrangeas, they tend to be a little drought sensitive, or even over the course of a day from morning to afternoon, you'll see them kind of wilt a little bit
and then come back later.
Day.
Yeah. Yep. So you got a couple options there. Tiffany, I probably wouldn't do a smooth hydrangea or like a hydrangea macrophylla, the big blue, pink flowered ones, because it's very hard to get flowers because of our winters. So I would avoid those. And they also like more shade. So go with a panicle.
I say oak leaf. You got
and
good fall
leaf,
color, beautiful flowers.
Yep. Very good. Okay, Erin has a question here. They've relocated buildings for work, and they now find themselves in a basement with no windows. Hence the basement we're in. So we know Erin, this question. Any plants that grow successfully down here, because there are 0 windows in this room. So Kelly, which houseplant would you do in a basement with no windows?
I think both of us should answer the question. My first instinct was ZZ plant. ZZ plant is the easiest house plant to grow.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a beautiful plant, hardly any plant damage. It's a little bit expensive in the industry because you can't take cuttings.
It's pretty slow growing too. Yeah.
But if I were to put a ZZ plant in my office, I would just put 6 of them.
Load it up.
And the reason being is because, you put 1 or 2 plants in an office to get those plant effects, meaning they clean the air, they give you oxygen. You really need 6 of them and not 1. So that's my piece of advice.
That's a really good point too. There's interesting studies out there that try and quantify the amount of air, benefits you get from plants. And I think what I've learned from reading those studies is that you really do need a lot of them. You need something like, for the average house, it was like 80 to 100 house plants to really make a dent in that.
Yeah.
And another interesting fact of that is it's actually the soil environment there that does a lot of that air purification too.
Good point.
So
that's a good point.
A bigger root zone and a bigger pot can get you a little more benefit on that. But I guess how I've answered that same question a lot of times is you really could put about any plant you want if you get a grow light.
True.
And nowadays LED grow lights, they're pretty energy efficient, and there's just such a wide range of different setups for those lights. You can get pretty cheap ones. You can get a little light that looks just kind of like a desk lamp that would sit right over your one little plant you have there that looks pretty, and you could really grow just a lot of different things that way. So So there's really a lot of options, even though you don't have a window.
Yeah,
you
can
could
still
provide your own light, or you could just get a plant that really deals well with low light. So.
Yeah, and pothos is the one that I recommended to. Devil's ivy, that's another good. If you want like more of a trailing, they tend to be super tough too in kind of low light conditions. So you got some options, Aaron. When we come back next time for Facebook Live, hopefully we'll see some plants down here.
I just wouldn't put a little tiny 6-inch plant in, even though he said the soil thing. I like your soil thing.
You gotta.
But I wouldn't put
a
a little tiny 6-inch plant in a 24-inch pot. I'd only bump it up a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to rot those roots out.
Yeah, it's going to stay too wet. Yeah.
Good point. You've got to kind of work your way up to the bigger pot.
Very true. Awesome. Well, keep those questions coming into the comments here. Follow up on Tiffany's. We didn't talk about, are the roots invasive of those hydrangea? Oh. And no, I don't know of any hydrangea that have super aggressive roots. So you're going to be totally fine.
Yeah.
Better than most other things you would put there. So you're good there. Okay, question from Jared, and it's relating to Japanese beetles, which we were going to talk about today, so that's perfect. Yeah. Jared wants to know, do you recommend putting out Japanese beetle traps or not? I've heard the traps may attract more beetles. You've heard correct, Jared.
Apocalyptic.
So who wants to talk about Japanese beetles?
Well,
it'd be interesting to see what each of us say, so you go first.
Yeah. Hear the answer.
Yeah, the traps generally aren't recommended. You're correct. It attracts more beetles than it really captures. Mm-hmm. There's no way that you could capture all the beetles that you're going to bring in with that attractant. So that's how the traps work. It's a scent, I believe,
a pheromone, I think, right?
Attracts them. Generally, the thing that I recommend is just removing them by hand into a bucket of soapy water or rubbing alcohol or something. And during daylight when they're feeding, their defense mechanism, if you walk up and bang a leaf onto that cup, is that they just drop down. Yeah, that's their natural defense mechanism. So they'll all drop into that bucket, and then you can safely get rid of them after that. But the key to that type of control is getting out on the very first time you see a Japanese beetle, getting out there and getting off of there. Because just like they're attracted to those scent traps, as they feed on your plant, they produce that pheromone and attract more beetles in, and they tend to center on those plants that have a lot of beetle activity. So once you really get heavily inundated with them, it's almost too late for that kind of control. At that point, I recommend exclosure if it's a really important plant, or just writing it off for this year.
Yeah. So putting like a row cover or something over it.
Yeah, just some type of netting that you can keep the beetles out with.
Yeah, one of the tactics for cut flower growers for like dahlias like these, I haven't done anything for mine yet, so they're just covered with Japanese beetles. They love them. But what some growers will do is they'll take like a mesh bag and they'll actually cover the flowers to exclude the beetles like that. So it takes a lot of work, but if you really want to allow dahlias,
it's an easy way if you really want to protect.
Yeah, if you want to protect certain things. Yeah,
maybe you pick a few plants out of all the ones that are getting attacked in your yard to protect. But Kelly, would you have anything to add to that, or a different control?
I always pinch off the lacy foliage. I think that's one thing that people always, he said, it leaves behind a feeding hormone. Get rid of that lacy foliage, even though with an intense Japanese beetle infestation, that could be the entire plant.
Yeah, so if you looked at like these amaranth in my garden, pretty much all of the foliage looks like this lacy foliage. So yeah, what I'll go through is go and pinch that back. Same with the zinnias. They're just loving it. So you would go through and remove all of that,
just physically
as much of
it
that as you can.
Yeah.
But I would do it, I think, early on. Like you said, I think early on is the secret to Japanese beetles, because people want chemical applications for Japanese beetles. And really, we discourage that because, the same things that Japanese beetles are visiting, our bees are visiting. And so then we're killing the bees. So when you use, say an imidacloprid, where you treat the base of the plant and it's taken up into the plant, you're still killing beetles. Bees. You're killing beetles too.
Beetles too.
Both, right?
Insect, really.
So that's your choice to make, of course. So you can do some sort of systemic, and that will kill everything. But another thing that I like to point out with Japanese beetles is everybody thinks, if I treat my yard for the Japanese beetle grubs, then I won't have Japanese beetle adults.
Yeah.
And that is a huge misconception, because Japanese beetles are good flyers, and I can treat my yard, but Ryan doesn't treat his yard, and it doesn't matter. I'm going to have Japanese beetles.
Yeah.
There's just no way you could treat the entire
No,
area around your house or
too
home.
much. Yeah, too much.
And
to get rid of them all.
Yeah, one thing that I'm just not into treating with chemicals. I don't want to get out there in the morning and knock beetles off every morning. So you know what? I don't grow things that Japanese beetles
and
like.
that's one thing to avoid. Like, if we know Japanese beetles love roses, so maybe you don't grow roses. Or in terms of trees, the lindens are looking pretty brown right now because the Japanese beetles have just ate up all of that foliage.
Lindens, sycamores, like those. But another thing to think about in all of this is what plant is it on and how detrimental is that to the plant. In the case of lindens, they're nearly a third defoliated every year probably by Japanese beetles, and they come back and flower and leaf out, and they're fine. So in some cases, it's maybe not that big of a deal. Now, on my blackberry plants, they raspberries, they really love those. And I think last year, they really stunted some new raspberries that I had going because they just defoliated so much, a little tiny plant, and I didn't get after them soon enough to control it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in some of those cases, maybe that's a kind of plant I should have not picked, or I should have a plan to really monitor or exclude them or just get rid of them quickly. So think about what plant it's on. Does it really matter to that plant?
Yeah, you kind of got to weigh your costs and your benefits and decide.
May just be an aesthetic thing, just looks bad.
And luckily, it's only a 6-week period, right? I mean,
it's almost over.
The adults are out for 6 weeks and then they're gone. So if you can tolerate that long, you can make it through.
I found them on my basil plant.
Oh yeah, eating your basil leaves.
I just pinch the basil.
Pinch it back. That works. Excellent. Great question. Keep those questions coming into the comment box there. We had another question, which we kind of just addressed earlier. They were asking specifically about gardens that had nice roses and Japanese beetles. What is cost to prevent those beetles from infesting your roses? So we kind of just talked about that. Either you exclude them, you cover them somehow, you hand drop them into a bucket of soapy water, or if you really need to or want to, there are chemical methods. So,
but again, the saving grace is that just the period of time. You just have a window there, a summer that you need to deal with it. And so are we midway through, or I'm trying to think when they usually kind of
it's got to be at least week 3 or 4.
It has to be. It feels like week 4 for me.
Yeah. Well, so hopefully maybe 2 more weeks, and then we'll be through it. Hopefully. Awesome. Okay, add those questions to the comments there. We've got another question ahead of time that came in from Karen. She has a large, beautiful snowball bush, which is a hydrangea from the picture that we saw. Her husband and her are planning to move to Kentucky, and they hate to lose this bush. What are the best ways to get cuttings of it? So how could she take it to her new place in Kentucky?
Well, I've had the best luck not taking cuttings, but digging the root suckers. And if you look around it looked like a really healthy shrub from the picture we saw. If you look around that shrub, you can find a little sprout coming up on the outer edges of it from underneath. Yeah. And I've just picked the healthiest one and tried to take a good chunk of soil out with it. And that's been a really great way to do it. And cuttings are a little tricky, and just the timing of year that you take them. I usually recommend a dormant cutting. So during the wintertime, I've had the best luck with those. Some plants do better with a cutting during the growing season with leaves on, but when you do that, you've actually snipped that leaf-filled twig off of its root system, and you have to provide enough water for it to keep it going. So it's probably misting leaves a lot of times, and
which when you're moving would be difficult to maintain.
So especially this time of year, to do any type of cutting would be really labor intensive. So that would probably be my suggestion is just digging them and potting them and taking them with you and planning to transplant them right when you get to Tennessee or wherever they said they were moving to.
Close,
Kentucky, and it would do fine in there. That's still perfectly fine for snowball hydrangeas. So.
Yeah. Or you could support the industry. Go buy a new one. And, it's acclimated to where you're gardening. Those hydrangeas that you're going to find in the industry are probably going to be good with the soil and the environment. So, even though I like the idea of hydrangea cuttings. I like the idea of a hydrangea drift.
Yes, love them.
But
Yeah. So Karen, try a couple of those things and see. Hopefully, I think you're right. Just digging up a small portion is going to be your best bet. Awesome.
And dig up a few extras in case one doesn't make it. Especially if you're planning to move it around.
Bets.
I've usually dug them and replanted them the same days, but I think in your case you probably need to kind of pot them up and plan to store them for a little bit.
Keep them well watered until you're able to get there. Yeah. Do you want to try your caterpillar again, Kelly?
I mean, we can try.
While we wait for some questions to come in. See if he cooperates.
I mean, I can definitely... Ryan, can you smell it?
Oh, I can. I can definitely smell it.
Let's see.
He is definitely camera shy.
Oh, man.
He thinks the camera's a predator.
There, you saw it. There, oh yeah. That was good.
So tell us what these are again, Kelly.
It is a forked scent gland that tells bee not to eat them. So it really smells in here. It smells very bad. Because,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, look at them go.
Just a really cool defensive mechanism.
And are there other caterpillars that have this, or?
Not that I know of. I mean,
unique to
I can't say that I've studied every caterpillar.
Sure.
I just know that with this one, I've always done stuff with kids, and so I'll find a caterpillar and poke them, and the kids go crazy.
Yeah.
But you poke them too much, then he knows that you're not going to eat them.
And you're not a danger. Awesome.
But I love it when people are like, oh, those parsley caterpillars? Well, I just kill them. And I'm like, that's black swallowtail.
You're going to take him back to the office, Ryan. Put him back.
I'm going to take him back to the
home.
Parsley patch he was in and let him resume eating. He's a little stressed out now.
Very good. Okay.
But,
cool.
Yeah, definitely a beautiful butterfly, though.
Mm-hmm.
Well worth.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's see if we have any new questions yet. And I don't see any refreshed yet, so I might just be taking a second. So, Ryan, would you want to talk about what you brought today, or what you were talking about?
I wanted to talk about one of my new favorite shrubs for landscaping, and it's one of my old favorites from the natural world. It's a native shrub to Illinois called Buttonbush.
Cool.
It grows along stream banks and wetlands. I guess I know it best from some of the wetlands of southern Illinois, is where I first kind of really started to like this plant, because it just has a super unique flower, like nothing I've ever really seen in the plant world. It's kind of like a little pincushion of a round circular ball. I think we have some pictures of it, and
really cool.
If you notice this plant, and this is one of the things that kind of drew my attention to it out in the wild in nature. A lot of times it's just covered by pollinators. I mean, you can hear a buzz of activity in this plant out in the forest. So it really has a high value to pollinators, and it's very productive during a time of year where we're kind of in a pollen dearth, like this mid part of summer where there's not a lot of pollen and nectar available from flowers or plants that are flowering. So it kind of fills that void in your pollinator garden. I think it's a plant we should probably think about adding to pollinator gardens a lot more.
How big does it get?
That's what I was just going to ask. How big
Well, it gets typically about 8 feet tall by 8 feet wide, but I mean, on a good side, it can get bigger. It can get up to 12 feet. And actually, I was reading in Michael Durr's manual of, the Manual of Landscape Woody Plants, Ornamentals. Great reference manual, but he talks about the national champion, as of the publishing of that last edition, was 26 feet tall by 38 feet wide.
What?
That's out in California.
Wow.
So it can get really big on the right side. But one thing I like about it is it's very prunable. It is, it has a pretty dense growth. You can really prune it to keep it small or keep it whatever shape you'd like, and just does well on a variety of sites. The one thing it can't take is a super dry location. Okay. If you like to water stuff, again, that's maybe not an issue if you water stuff a lot. But if you have a wet spot, that's a problem. That's where I found it really fits well. It can handle a little bit of shade, so at least needs part sun, so at least needs 4 hours, 4 to 6 hours of sun per day. But I like to tuck it under a shade tree kind of on the edge, or on the edge of a shade garden where you need something a little taller as a backdrop. It will form a nice thicket for you, so to make, if you want to have a kind of like a dense mass planting,
something like that.
Yeah, it does that well.
When do you prune it?
I recommend pruning it during dormancy,
And would you just prune it
during
if you
winter
wanted
time.
to like keep it a little smaller? Like, does it need
Yeah,
pruning
it
necessarily?
doesn't really need pruning.
Yeah.
It does tend to have a little bit of a, coarse habit in the wintertime if you don't prune it a little bit and kind of keep it neat and symmetrical. But for me, I kind of like that just unnatural, or natural, I guess, look. It doesn't have to be pruned, but if you do want to keep it a certain shape, you may want to. Sometimes they get a little lopsided one way or the other due to their growth, but
So
I'm gonna have to try
great
it.
bush for the pollinator garden.
I got a spot near a downspout that I'm thinking might be a good spot.
I will make a spot.
well, and it handles wet soils, but a lot of times in the urban environment, our soils are really compacted, and so they tend to hold water a little longer. And a plant like this does really well with low oxygen in the soil, and that's what that soil compaction does, is limits the amount of oxygen available to roots. So just a tough plant. I mean, see
Any
it all over the place.
other attributes?
Those are probably the main ones. It's adapted to wet sites, compacted soils, and just has beautiful flowering. I guess the other thing is the flowers do kind of mature into this nice red fruit in fall.
Yeah.
Which is pretty attractive, adds some interest. It has a little bit of fall color to it. And the leaves.
Pretty good.
But those fruits kind of persist through winter. So that's valuable to birds. So there's about over 24 species of native birds that actually use that during the wintertime as food.
Wow.
Probably about half of those are migratory waterfowl, which we're not going to necessarily have in our yard, but there's other bird species that are migratory that use that throughout the wintertime as a food source. So
very good. I'm going to have to try some. So I know your Master Naturalist group's having a native sale. Are they going to be selling this one by chance?
We are, yeah. This is a plant included in the East Central Illinois Master Naturalist native tree and shrub sale.
Cool.
So we have that sale every year, and our plant list varies based on what we can source each year. But Buttonbush is on the plant list this year, along with, I think we have 10 or 11 native trees and maybe about a dozen native shrubs on that list. So all do great in Central Illinois and really pretty much throughout the state of Illinois. They're all natives. And
When's that sale?
it's going on now. It's actually you would order online, so it's going on now through August 7th is the last date to order online, and then pickup is in October, and it's in Urbana, Illinois. So if you're not close to Urbana, it may not be as suitable of a sale to you, but again, it's a list of all native trees and shrubs, so promotes our native wildlife, and
very cool.
Should be some great plants coming in October.
Cool. And a lot of our other organizations do those kind of sales too.
In Bloomington, we have the Wild Ones, which a native plant organization that has a spring sale where you can get native plants.
Yeah, and some conservation districts will sell things like that too. So.
And I think the industry, more and more native plants, not the selection we want. I mean, I want to see 50 different kinds.
Yeah.
But more and more the industry are carrying some native plants.
Yeah, you're starting to see them around at garden centers and other places. But the more that folks like us that want them, drive that, demand for it and ask for it, the more we get them. So so mention that at your garden center. If you're not seeing natives, ask them if they can get some. And
very cool.
You might be surprised. They may be able to order you some.
Awesome. Well, try out some Buttonbush if you don't have any yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to try some for sure. Well, we've got 2 questions that have come in. If anybody has any gardening questions, put them in the comments there. Mary has a question here. How to kill hardy woody weeds if the roots cannot be pulled out? So if you get like a tree that sprouts up somewhere that you don't want anything woody.
Tree of heaven.
Like tree of heaven. I have maples that come up everywhere in my landscaping.
Well, the nice thing with maples is you can pull them.
Most of those are pretty easy. Yeah.
So we're talking about something you can't
something
easily
you can't
wrench
pull out
of the
easy. You wait too long, or it's just got too much of a root system.
I think my preferred method, if you're okay with using pesticides, is to cut it off and treat the stump with the pesticide. That's probably just the most effective way to get rid of a woody plant.
And the safest, I think.
And the safest. You're concentrating that chemical right on the cut stump. You're not spraying a foliar spray that could drift and get anything else. The only thing I'll caution is there are some chemicals out there that are a little more mobile and can pose a threat. One of the so just do a little research into that. But
read the label,
any of
follow
your
the label.
Glyphosate products do well. Triclopyr is another one. It's often mixed with 2,4-D. That's a great product for treating stumps. picloram is one that actually does move offside a little bit. So that particular chemical, I personally have seen it kill other things around it and even leave a dead spot for a number of years in a place if you use too much. So, but I think in all situations, if you're using it by the labeled rate and you're applying it correctly, you shouldn't have a lot of problem with that. But I would just say, go with one of the less mobile herbicides. Other than that, the only, if you can't physically pull it out, the only other way is to dig it up. If you don't want to use a chemical on it. And I tend to, or get them when they're small enough.
Try to stay on top of them as hard as it can be.
I just keep cutting them back, and hopefully, eventually, I exhaust all the resources.
And if you got the time to keep, cut it back, it'll flush again. Cut it back, flush again. If you don't want to do the chemical treatment, that's.
And I mean, I've accomplished that with mowing or weed whacking too, doing the same thing in an area where I had woody stuff coming up that I didn't want. You can just slowly deplete its energy by repeatedly cutting it. There's a variety of ways. I'd say the cut stump treatment with a herbicide is your quickest and fastest and most effective way.
Yep,
I think so too.
So I'm just being a particular gardener, a non-chemical gardener. But if I were to suggest somebody else, I would not suggest the method that I'm using. I'd suggest his method.
And it's all on scale too. It kind of depends how much you're dealing with and how much
or how big the tree is. Like if you let a mulberry grow up, it's fast.
And I'm very organic too in my gardening, especially around my vegetable garden and things. But when I have, especially a non-native invasive species, that's kind of where I've drawn the line of being organic.
I agree.
You got honeysuckle coming up.
I feel like they kind of cheat. They came here from another continent, so I can kind of cheat and use the herbicide in those cases.
But poison ivy, just spray the whole area.
So give it a try, Mary. Hopefully that'll help control some of those woody weeds that you have going on. We got a question here from Rhea. What are good perennials for my bungalow backyard garden? She lives in Chicago on the southeast side. Good perennials. So I'm assuming it's kind of a smaller backyard garden, I imagine. Well, it depends on how much sun or shade you have. That would be the first thing, Rhea. But in terms of natives blooming right now, I would definitely add some liatris. I love liatris. It's a great native perennial, super heat and drought tolerant, and it has these beautiful purple flowers. I would definitely do purple coneflower. That would be another really good native. That's our pink flowers with the orange centers. So I tend to start with natives.
That's assuming pretty sunny, though.
So if you have sun, then I would go for some of those native things. Black-eyed Susans would be really tough.
They might be a little aggressive, though.
Yeah, it depends how much you want to fill in.
Caryopteris, which is
that's a good one
bluebeard, which a nice little compact blue flowering shrub that might do well.
There's a lot.
Sedums, you can't go wrong with sedums. True. Ground cover sedums or sedum autumn joy.
Yep.
I love it when they're like, no, perennials. I mean, I could probably give you a million. Let's see, spring. What would you do for spring? Okay, here we go. We're going to play a game. Okay, we're going to do sun and then shade.
Okay.
And then spring, summer, fall. And I'm going to go down the list.
Oh, geez.
Spring, sun.
Peonies.
Spring sun, I would do candy tuft, that Iberis.
Like a low-growing ground cover,
Spring sun.
Spring sun. I mean, I guess I probably should do something woody, right?
I mean, that's what you know, right?
I don't know. One thing I like I really like spice bush as a native. I guess it could actually handle a little shade too, though, but it flowers really early, so before its leaves come out. So that's one thing I think of in spring as a flowering plant, but...
Okay, summer sun.
Liatris or purple coneflower.
My summer sun, I am totally digging my rattlesnake master right now.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good tough one.
I like hydrangeas a lot.
Yeah,
I've done a whole row across the front of our house that they're in full bloom right now. We've kind of talked about those today.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Fall sun.
Let's say asters.
My fall sun would be the Caryopteris, the bluebeard.
Let's see. Fall sun. We talked about oak leaf hydrangea. That's one of my favorite smaller things.
Yeah.
in the
love that
fall.
too.
I hate to keep picking plants that we've already
It's okay.
That's a
talked
good
about
one, though.
today, but
and that's great for fall.
yeah, some of my
fall
favorites.
garden.
I think they get that hydrangea is a good plant
I
to
mean,
grow
it's
because the
solid.
horticulturists approve
And
hydrangeas.
They love
oak leaf
it.
hydrangea, not native to Illinois, but just
So
about
beautiful.
just
But
south of
it's-
here.
Yeah, and it grows so
Um,
well here.
Mhm.
Cool. Okay, so there's some sun ideas
Okay,
for you.
spring
Rhea.
shade.
Spring shade lungwort. Beautiful pink, blue flowers.
Spring shade brunera.
That's a good one.
Just really beautiful foliage and forget-me-nots. These little blue.
Yeah, blue flowers that
Flowers.
come up.
Spring shade. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't really
Something
have a
woodland,
favorite.
like Shack in the Pulpit or something that's like
you know,
mayapple. Or...
Yeah, I mean, I really
Something that she can grow.
something that that's true. You know, I mean,
Or a bulb. What about a bulb? Like a spring bulb.
Yeah, columbine's a good one. I have that in a number of different spots.
It's a beautiful plant.
That's a good choice. Good choice.
Okay,
Okay,
summer.
Shade. I mean, hosta, obviously.
I say astilbe.
That's a good one.
It's late spring, early summer. It's just really plumy flower. It's awesome.
I mean, it's not really flowering right now, but one plant I really like for a shady spot in the summertime is pawpaw.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
It actually flowers really early in the spring, kind of like spice bush, but I like its big floppy leaves
Yeah, it looks
and
good
its
this time
foliage.
of year, yeah.
It's kind of a spindly tree at times, so you can have other stuff under it as well. So that's
Good
something
for a
we
shade
just
garden.
was hiking last week and saw a bunch of, and just really like it's kind almost has a tropical look to its
Yeah.
foliage.
know.
Huge leaves, yeah.
Giant
I love it,
leaves,
too.
but
Very
it does
cool.
great in the shade.
Very good.
Okay, fall shade.
Fall shade.
Stumps.
Yes, stumps. Our stumpery gardens. I'm gonna go with hellebores, though. Hellebores would be a spring option. I love hellebores because they're evergreen. They still look good in the fall and the winter.
So for fall shade, I love Fothergillia. It's beautiful little tiny flowers in the spring, but then it turns a really pretty fall color
Yeah, it
in
does
the
have really good
fall.
fall color. Small
And it's
shrub,
a great
kind of low
small
growing.
shrub for
Yeah.
the shade.
Kind of
Okay.
fits in a good spot.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good something with maybe fall color or
Yeah.
that does well in the shade. Well, I mean, we've already kind of talked about spice bush. I probably should have saved that for one of my shade species. It has good fall color.
Yeah.
Your
Your oak leaf would look good in some shade too in the fall.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
Pretty adaptable.
Does a little bit of shade. Yeah, those would probably be some of my suggestions for shade in the fall.
Very good, very good. Well, hopefully that helps, Rhea. There's a lot of options, so if you have more specific parameters, we can we can help you out even better because you got lots of options. And of course, if you go to our extension website, we have a web page on almost every kind of group. So if you're looking for annuals, perennials, trees, shrubs, we've got a website, so that's a great place to start too. Yeah. Okay, awesome. We've got about 5 minutes or so left. So if you've got lingering questions, put them in there. Wendy's asking, how can I fight blight on my apple trees? How can I fight blight? So probably fire blight is what she's referring to.
Yeah.
Fire blight.
Once you really start to have much fire blight, there's not really a great control method.
Yeah.
You know, in more recent years, there's been a lot of blight-resistant varieties that have been developed. And I know that's what a lot of people don't want to hear when they say, my tree has fire blight,
Yeah.
what can I do?
Too
Well,
late at that point, yeah.
plant a better tree, but you really, once it develops very far, I mean, I don't know of an effective treatment. Do you guys to really stop it?
No, there's some that are labeled for fire blight, but I don't think they're really effective.
I've never had luck with it.
No.
It's just been something that, unless you catch it really early, I've maybe had a little bit of luck on a Callery pear or Bradford pear controlling it when it was caught early, but especially if your plant has any of the trunk cankers at all going on, that's just going to spread it so quickly.
Yeah. So catch it early, and you can try to prune out some of the damaged area.
You can.
Key there, though, is to disinfect your pruners. Right?
Yeah, and so that's how I've been effective on pear at controlling it, is really rapidly pruning out anything that shows infection and going not just the part with the dead leaves, but going back several
like
feet.
6 inches or at least, I think they recommend, if not more.
And that's the thing you do have to remember, like Candice mentioned, is your pruner cuts can spread that. So in between each cut, you need to have rubbing alcohol and you need to disinfect those, or you'll spread it throughout that tree, or you'll spread it to other species that are susceptible. So
do not waste your time doing that. Do not waste.
Are you saying just get a chainsaw and cut it down? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying go out and get a new cultivar. Get a new cultivar that has disease resistance, because organic apples, it's hard. You can't do it.
Hard.
There's so many things that attack apples here in Illinois. And these major apple producers are on this intense spray program. Just go out and get like the new, most up-to-date cultivar.
Most disease-resistant as possible.
And start growing that for your apples in the backyard.
Well, and in reality, an apple tree is not that long-lived, especially if it's a grafted dwarf apple tree. So starting over is really not.
I suggest other things like maybe pears are a little more disease-resistant than apples as you think about a replacement. So there's other fruit trees you can do that are, I'd say probably the worst of it all would be peaches. So, probably don't pick a peach. Yeah. I know here in central Illinois, we lost almost all of our peach crop due to the flower buds freezing in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So,
apple and pear is at least more reliable in terms of fruiting. But
I've kind of tended to switch towards pear now as I'm planting things. I've planted a lot of apples in the past, and I'm very organic again, and I've just kind of dealt with not perfect apples. Yeah. And that's okay with
and if you're growing them for yourself,
me,
then that's great.
But I tend to plant a few more pears these days just because I've had better luck without doing much and getting good fruit off of those.
Very cool.
And I know an apple grower who's like, she's got the spray scheduled down to the day.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that is pretty intense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Wendy says we're cracking her up. She said one apple tree is a goner, so you convinced her on that. Way to go.
She just doesn't want to do the work.
She said, what about apple scab, though? What would you do for apple scab?
I would find a resistant cultivar.
Again, a resistant cultivar, but, there's you can do a lot with pruning, just keeping your canopy of your apple tree thinned out a little bit and not too dense, because it's all that moisture in the springtime that kind of promotes the infection, and then it's now that we're kind of seeing all the leaves drop, and crab apples especially, you'll see them all over the place now, just looking nearly dead. So just by pruning and increasing airflow, it's a fungal leaf infection, so that's going to limit the ability of that fungus to infect new leaves. It is possible, again, like we talked about, to do a spray schedule for that.
Yep.
Now, that would start in the early spring, about the time flowers come out, and you'd be doing that all the way through till about June to really effectively control for apple scab. And depending on the product you use, it may be every couple weeks you're spraying. So that to me is not really not worth it. I've dealt with it just with pruning and cultural practices like that. Pruning, cleaning
up like those leaves that do drop, or any leftover fruits, cleaning up those at the end of the season.
Getting all that out of there, yep.
Or again, replant with a disease-resistant.
And that is one that really can be just about totally handled with disease-resistant.
Exactly, it's pretty solid. And even more like the newer crab apples that are coming out are pretty consistently scab-resistant too, which is one
we've had success with. Where fire blight, there's definitely some pretty resistant cultivars, but I feel like on stuff that's been totally resistant, I've seen fire blight come in.
It's
just not a guarantee.
It's never 100%. Like, you're never going to get it.
If you have a good enough source in your neighborhood, you might still get it.
Yeah, very true.
But apple scab's kind of not the same.
Go cut down all your neighbors' apple trees and crab apple trees.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Wendy, for those apple questions. We wish you the best of luck with those apple trees. So in our final minutes, I think that was our last question. So, Kelly, you want to send us off with a look at our caterpillar again here?
Oh, my friend. I'm going to have to get rid of him soon.
I think we have a chair for him to sit on.
See if he...
Very nice, very nice.
Let's see if he sends us off with a little... Yeah, I know my finger's in the way.
You're a danger.
I see him on the parsley, the fennel, the dill, carrots. Awesome. Just let him eat it up.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We had some great questions. Go out in your garden, look for those swallowtail caterpillars, and leave them be. Let them enjoy that parsley. We will see you next time. So if you have gardening questions that come up, take notes, and we will answer them the next time we're on. Thanks everybody for joining us.